Hey guys, I'm super excited. I have my friend Brian Charlesworth on the podcast today. Brian is the founder and CEO of Sisu.co. A lot of you are in the know on Sisu because it's such a great program. It's a productivity platform that helps agents really get focused in on what truly matters in their business, which is the key activities we should be doing every day to produce results. I was so impressed. Brian, you might not even remember this, but I think on your podcast, or you on my podcast?
You were on my podcast, yes.
We got to talk and you showed me the program after I invested in it for all of my brokerage coaching students and my team, and everybody loves it. So we've been a proud customer of your program, your platform for the last couple of years. But that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about other things in the industry. So Brian, first of all, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Jim. I'm grateful to be on the show and excited to spend some more time with you. I always find it fascinating and rewarding to spend time with you. So thanks.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Well, there's been a lot of change in the industry since the last time we talked, and a lot, of course, the NAR settlement just is brewing. But with your platform, you have a lot of metrics that you can track, which I think is really interesting about how you're running your business. What do you think is the most important things that people should be focused on right now in terms of just making sure you don't get lost in the weeds?
Yeah, it's a great question. The first thing I want to say is, yes, we let people track things, but we also streamline and automate things so that it's easier to track. So instead of using spreadsheets and Trello and Monday and, all these different platforms and Google intake forms and, just single platform should handle everything you need that's integrated with your CRM. And that's essentially what Sisu is, if for those of you who didn't know that. So today, to answer your question, Jim, my personal opinion is that the single most important metric we can track today is that conversion ratio from buyer appointments met to buyer appointments signed, right? It's now equally as important as listing appointments met to listing appointments signed. A listing agent's always had to have a great presentation. They've always, prepared a pre-listing packet. They've done all these things to differentiate themselves. The buyer agent now needs to do the same thing. We have a lot of things that can help them do that. But to answer your question, my opinion is if I'm a team leader today or a broker owner, I'm making sure my agents know how to get those buyers signed as well as those listings signed.
Now, you have an interesting perspective because you're able to see at a macro scale all these massive teams and brokerages that your company serves, and you're able to see the data streams coming through that. Can you put a number to that? I mean, just off the top of your head, with the difference between seller appointments, attended and seller signed versus buyer appointments attended versus seller signed, is there a massive difference?
Yeah. Last time I looked at that, buyer appointment signed, listing appointment signed is around 50%.
Yep.
If you're a great listing agent that has been doing expireds and you know how to do pre-listing packets and you know how to go out and do what you need to do. That's where I started in this industry. And I remember my conversion rate was 25%. Until I started, because I was calling all those expireds, competing against some of the top agents in the world, which I was only a listing agent for 18 months, but I got that up to 75%. And the key differentiators there were I learned how to ask the right questions and to make it about them and not to show up and throw up and talk about me and my team. And the other thing I did is I started bringing a pre-listing packet, giving them a pre-listing packet the day before I met with them.
That's a really interesting concept. That's something brand new. I've been with all my coaching students. We just created a 16-page buyer presentation because most agents don't have a buyer presentation. So I thought that was a first step. But you're bringing up an interesting second step. First of all, you should have a buyer presentation. But I hadn't really thought about that. So you just brought it up. We should, because we do that with sellers. We have a pre-listing kit, but a pre-buyer meeting kit just as important. Really fascinating. I love it.
Okay. Do you want to take that to the next level, Jim?
Oh yeah, do it. Let's hit it.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Sisu client portal?
I am not. Nope.
Okay. So we rolled out about a year ago a client portal that allows the client to see kind of a roadmap, right? When you order DoorDash, I'm guessing. Is DoorDash something you order on a regular basis?
Yep, of course.
So tell me what happens when you order DoorDash. You submit the order and what happens?
Then it says order received, orders being prepared, orders being, en route to you, order delivered, the whole process.
Exactly. But here we are, the most expensive purchase of most of our clients' lifetimes.
Yeah.
And we're not even informing them of what's going on in this transaction process.
Right.
So the biggest weakness of most agents is communicating effectively. And so this is really built to help that, so that as a transaction coordinator is checking things off, the client's getting notified, and then they can log in and they can see that roadmap.
Yeah.
So it's a really, really cool thing. And we've been using it for, under contract to closed or listing to under contract. So there's a roadmap and they can see where they're at in that process. Doesn't mean you should stop communicating as an agent. I know when I was an agent, if I had 5 people under contract at a time, I'd block out every Wednesday to reach out to those 5 people who are under contract and walk them through. We just did this for you. This is what's next. What questions do you have? Imagine doing that with logging into Zoom and showing them their client portal.
Yeah.
Now take that to the next level. Imagine showing up for a buyer appointment or a listing appointment, and you've already shared the documents. You've already shared their pre-listing packet in a client portal that they've gotten notified, that they've downloaded, and you could actually send them a message in there. Congratulations, we're excited to work with you. Welcome to our client portal. How much of a differentiator do you think that is compared to your average agent out there?
Oh,
if
night and day.
by the time you show up, they already know they want to use you.
Right.
I mean, I had a pre-listing packet that by the time I showed up, half of them knew they wanted to use me.
Right.
But it wasn't nearly as good as if it was a client portal that said, look, this is the way we work with you. It's completely different than any other real estate company in the world. Right. And this is our team. This is the way we do business.
I think that's absolutely brilliant. Brilliant. So when we're talking about these, buyer agency change or buyer representation agreements that people are going to have to be signing now, you're right that representation agreement with the buyer is no different than a representation agreement with the seller. So they become equally important. We've often put buyers at kind of a discount to sellers because they're not signing an agreement, but suddenly they're going to be signing an agreement.
All of a sudden, we've always said, look, listing agents have to be the most talented agents in the market, right?
Right.
Buyers agents have to be just as good now.
Yeah.
They have to be able to represent their value. Let us help you do that, because you can really set yourself apart by just doing a few smart things.
Yeah, in the East, in the Japanese culture, when you're talking about sales, their perception of sales always starts on the buy side, not the sell side, because they say you can make a product, you can have a product, but there's nobody to buy it. What does it matter, right? And it's kind of the same thing. The buyer is really going to determine whether they're going to buy into this product or not. So kind of the same philosophy. I love it. So what other things are you talking about with agents and teams and brokerage leaders that you think are really resonating right now in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is by far, we have 3,600 teams on our platform, and I talk to team owners every day.
Sure.
And I think that is by far and away top of mind right now, is just how do I help my buyers agents show their value?
Yeah.
And so I've really keyed in to that by helping them focus on the metric and helping them get these, call it client portals in place that differentiate them. But there's a lot going on in the industry right now. I would say it comes back to the things that have always been the most important. And Jim, I've talked to you about this, but I believe the 2 most important things if you want to grow a business in real estate are, number 1, agent productivity, and number 2, recruiting more agents.
Right.
And so when we built Sisu, that's exactly what it's built to do, is help you increase your agent productivity by letting your agents set goals, holding them accountable, and also helping recruit more agents and onboard those agents. The big problem with most people is when they recruit agents, they think, geez, I can only onboard 1 or 2 agents a month because it's too much work.
Right.
If you have systems in place to onboard those agents, you can actually have a VA do it from the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
And, you could do 10 at a time. No big deal.
Right. So that's really interesting, because when we talk about brokerages and teams, I mean, our customers are our agents. And so if we're not recruiting new customers, our agents, then we're failing as a business owners, because our businesses by nature are always kind of shrinking. But I love this idea of agent productivity, which is something I coach to a lot. And I believe that if you, what you're doing with your teams or with your brokerage owners, everything you do, whether it's your coaching, your mentorship, your recruiting, your retention strategies, your technology, your social media, all of it boils down to per agent productivity. And if it's all in that number, and it's all representative in that number. If you're a terrible manager, it shows up there. If you're a bad recruiter, it shows up there. If you're bad marketing, it shows up there, which I think is exactly to your point. And it also is it's the greatest attractor. If you have a great per agent productivity, everybody wants to work for you. So That's all.
And also if you have a great culture, right? If people know that you're going to hold them accountable, and to a lot of people, accountability is a negative term, but it's not a negative term if you have somebody that wants to make 200,000 a year and you say, you know what, I can guarantee you that if you will follow these steps, if you will do the things I do, and I'm going to hold you accountable to this once a week, that I can help you make $200,000.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's not about splits at that point. It's about how much money they're going to put in their pocket. And
Right.
if you can ensure that they're going to do that, that's how you set yourself apart.
Well, when you bring up splits, that's interesting because when you look at teams generally, people are on a little bit lower split on the team because by nature, the team leader's covering all the costs. And
Yeah.
so why are people still going to teams? Why are people so attracted to teams? They're attracted to teams because of systems, because of technology, because they're being told what to do. And I think that's a missing component when you bring that up, is that people crave that. They
Yeah.
crave direction, they crave leadership, and they crave somebody holding them accountable because they know for the average agent, they just are not great at accountability, and they
Yeah.
kind of shift and chase rabbits all day long. I think you're
I
dead on.
mean, think about, I owned Housemaster Home Inspections for a while, and I partnered with Budget Blind. So I was in the franchising world for a little while. Why are people attracted to franchises? It's
System.
because they can follow a system
Yeah.
and they can make a certain amount of money.
Right.
This is no different. If you can provide them with a system of accountability and a system of, like you said, I have the technology, I have the leads, right? I have the
Right.
transaction coordination, I have the training, I have everything you need to make, 200, 300, whatever, $1,000 a year. And you can essentially guarantee that if you'll lead in that way.
As somebody that's probably the one of the most connected with teams in America, do you see team sizes growing, shrinking? Kind of, is there a sweet spot for team sizes? I'm curious with you.
It's a great question. I would say over the last 6 months, teams are making less money
Yep.
in general. There are some teams that are doing phenomenal,
Sure, of course.
but in general, teams are making less money than they ever have. There are more teams that are not profitable today than I
Mhm.
think there's ever been.
Yeah.
And I just think it's, the interest rates went from 2% to 8%. Home sales went from 6.8 million to 3.8 million, which, by the way, is 400,000 less than 2008, which we all think is the lowest real
Yeah.
estate market ever.
Right.
That's caused some challenges for these teams. And now I think everyone's questioning, okay, what can I do about this lawsuit? And some people are taking action. Just like they did when COVID hit. Some
Mhm.
people took action and some people sat on the sidelines or buried their face in a pillow. And
Right.
if you do that, you'll be out of business. So focus today on doing the changes that you need to do to make sure your agents are successful.
I think what's interesting about these changes is that there's a group of leaders that are being like you that are being really proactive, and they're saying, "Hey, here, let's talk about, we're all in this situation, but what's the solution?" And talking about solution. And then you have a whole other group of leaders who are just kind of like, "Oh, let's just wait till July and we'll figure it out then." And we're just gonna kind of bury our head in the sands. I think those are the people that are going to get crushed, and I think
Yeah.
you're dead right.
Whatever you are going to put in place, put it in place today. Have your agent start doing it today. Whether it's our client portal or something else, you just need to make sure, like today, your buyers should get a buyer broker signed on every contract, right?
Yep.
Every buyer appointment, they should go out and get a buyer broker signed. They
Yep.
should practice the script of, okay, these are the way I get paid, right? And this is the value I bring. This is what I'm going to be doing for you. And if you outline that and communicate effectively, there's still gonna be value. I mean, all the studies have shown, and you know this, Jim, but 75% of home buyers say that they want an agent other than the listing agent to represent them.
Yeah. That's right.
It's still there. It's just a matter of how good a job are we going to do in showing our value so that we can keep getting paid the same amount or possibly even more than we ever have,
Right.
versus just, going out and showing homes. And I think there's challenges on all fronts. I think things are being worked on that are going to solve maybe for these new first-time buyers, where that'll be built into the loan or whatever it is. I think in many cases, the seller will still pay it because strong listing agents are still going to have that happen.
Sure.
But I think the area that to me is probably the most at risk is, you know, if you're buying a $2 million home and the agent would typically make 70, 80 grand off that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for showing you 3 homes, a lot of those buyers are going to say, you know what, I'll pay you 15 grand or 20 grand, but I'm not paying you 80 grand
Right.
to
Right.
show me 3 houses, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So anyway, we'll see where that all shakes out. But again, I believe that the buyer's agents that get stronger from this and are changing their skills right now, they're actually going to have more market share because, like you said, when we started this call, a lot of the agents today that are in the industry will not be here.
No, they'll shake out, especially some of the older ones that have been through so much change and they just don't want anymore.
Yeah.
Just want to exit and it's just too much for them.
Yeah.
One interesting stat I just saw just related to this conversation is that Washington State implemented buyer representation agreements as of January. Kind of got ahead of this before the NAR settled. And the outcome so far, I just read or I just heard from one of my colleagues, is that 92% of sellers are still offering to pay the buyer's agents as of today. It doesn't mean it won't change over time, but it's all in the conversation we're having with sellers. My anticipation is that this will become a part of our natural offer writing process. We're going to put it in the contract, and it'll be a negotiation per transaction. But it's all going to be, again, your skills as a presenter, your skills as a negotiator. It's going to determine your success level.
Yeah, I mean,
a really interesting question here, I think, because we got a lot of people out there that say, I think I want to be a team leader. I have that aspiration to be a team leader.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think the step off point is for that? I mean, when is a solo agent, should they say, yeah, it's time for me to move into team ownership?
I think it's more than this time. Like, why do you want to move into team ownership?
Yeah.
Like,
question.
Are you looking to get out of production?
Mm-hmm.
Because most team owners are still in production.
Right. Vast majority.
And many of them are making less than they made as an agent.
Right. Yep.
And this is why I built Sisu, Jim, because just because you have sold 30 homes or 50 homes or whatever it is, and you're now saying, oh, my next step is to be a team leader. Well, you're a really great agent. You're a great salesperson, but that doesn't necessarily make you a great leader.
Yeah.
To be a great leader, you need to have systems in place. You need to have, ways to hold your agents accountable. You need to be able to be a sales leader. You need to be able to manage an ops team. And so anyway, just make sure, I would say, if you're going to do it, know why you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, I mean, I've talked to so many team leaders who, most team leaders' goal is to get out of production.
Yeah.
But they can't do it because they don't have systems in place.
Right.
So I actually was meeting with one of the CEOs of one of the larger brands a few months ago. And he asked me, he said, so like if you were to narrow it down in one sentence, like, what do you really do? And I said, what we really do is we turn agents who want to run a team into great leaders and help them get out of production.
Wow.
Like that's it.
That should be your tagline right there.
That's what we do. But do you really want that? I mean, some people want to sell homes forever, right? Some team leaders, that they are the only listing agent on their team. It just depends on what you're after, right? So I would say it's different for everyone. I wish I could give you a general answer, Jim, that just said, hey, this is it. But it just really depends on what somebody wants to do.
Yeah, what I find with team leaders in talking to them and coaching them is that they have a hard time giving up control because they're alphas and they love to be in total control. And I always tell them you can't grow capacity without giving up control. So you got to give up control, just like you're saying. If you want to step out of production, you got to give up control. And that's the thing that they hold on to a little bit too long and they just can't give it up. But I think it's really interesting. But
what they don't realize is if they have systems in place, they can give up control and they can actually have more control.
Yeah. Just at a higher level.
Yeah. It's a whole different game. I mean, I remember, I'm going to use my wife as an example here. So I remember when I jumped into real estate about 8 years ago, and she had a small team of like 5 agents. She now has 100 agents on her team. But I remember she had a transaction coordinator leave. And it was like the most frustrating day for her. And I remember tears because she was going to have to spend 90 days training a new transaction coordinator.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? if you have systems in place, you can, somebody leaves, you plug in somebody else and everything's there. They check off the boxes and do what you have set up for them to do, and they're
Right.
good to go. There's no 90 days of training.
Right.
So you actually have more control
Yeah,
if that example makes sense.
I know. I think I totally agree. It makes you less dependent on a specific person and more dependent on the systems, which is what
Exactly.
you should have in place. What obviously your system's incredible, Sisu. When you're looking at technology, you're looking at, let's say, AI, which is a big hot topic now too.
Yeah.
What kind of AI out there is impressive to you as somebody in the tech industry?
Yeah, I mean, I play with AI all the time. I think AI is going to go to a whole different level
Yeah.
here in the very near future. I've heard a lot of people call it AI 2.0, and a lot of the companies that we think of, such as ChatGPT, that are not 2.0 but are 1.0, are going to be obsolete, potentially. But I mean, as an entrepreneur, my next company I'm going to start, it definitely has to be an AI company because that's where everyone wants to put money today, right?
Yeah.
um, but I think there's so much you can do with AI. I mean, we're working on some different AI things that would allow, like, we have a full reporting platform, that, we have tons of reports and you can filter and sort data in any way, but with AI, you could just ask a question and get that answer. And so those are the types of things we're working on, such as, hey, you know what? I just want to see how many Zillow leads in this zip code I closed last month.
Yeah.
Will you show that to me?
Right.
Oh, here they are.
Boom.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
Another thing on AI that is some of the gamification stuff. I mean, we know your patterns. We know what people do. We know how many, appointments or conversations it takes for somebody to get a sale.
it.
And so there's a lot of AI that can be built into that stuff as well to motivate agents.
Yeah. And that is one thing I love about Sisu is that it relates to everything. The biggest highlight, if you're in the system, you're looking at your dashboard, is synergy on conversations, because conversations lead to closings. And I think that's brilliant. And then you have everything else you could be doing as well, of course, but conversations is where it's at. It all comes back to human interaction. It's
I
just,
mean, any agent, if I could tell an agent, if you make 55 conversations, if that's your number,
Mhm.
you'll close a house.
Right.
Agents are going to be a lot more likely to have 55 conversations within a 2-day period if that's the case, right?
If they know that's it.
They know they can make a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've seen those convert. For some people, that is every 20 conversations. For some
Right.
people, it's every 150 to 200 conversations they're going to close a house.
Yeah.
But
And
you need to know what it is for you.
I was going to say, unless you're tracking it, you'll never know the actual number.
Yeah.
In my coaching, we call it 30. I mean, on an average, but I 100% agree. Some people are better and some people are worse. It's all
Yeah.
skill level, right? And I think over time, if you're trained and coached, of course it gets better, right?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And the longer you're in the business, the easier it is, because now all of a sudden you have repeat, business, you have referral business, you have more SOI business. So obviously, as you go down that path, it gets easier and easier.
Right. So where do you see, in terms of lead gen? Do you see lead gen for the people that are in the Sisu platform coming, as we're talking about, more from repeat and referral business, or is it coming more from their version? I know most people are kind of getting away from buying online leads. At least the big teams I'm talking to, they're starting to create their own leads. Is it their own online lead creation? Is it referral and repeat business? Is it mailings, or do you have a sense of that?
I would say there are 4 legs on a stool, and hopefully every team has identified what are the 4 primary things they want that to be.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people are trying right now, just with people knowing there's a risk of their income going down. Right now, they're saying, hey, I want to figure out how to stop paying 35 or 40% Top City and Zillow. And so they're trying to do, a lot of these large teams especially have a very large percentage of their business, anywhere from 25 to 60% of their business is Zillow and Op City.
Crazy.
So they're focused on how do I get out of that? Well, one, I want to make sure all of my people are working on their SOI, and I'm going to feed and, I'm going to contact their SOI for them, and I'm going to do all those touches. And
Mhm.
the other thing I think that's big right now is going back to the basics. Like, if I sold real estate for a year and a half. My first year in the business, I sold 48 homes. And I know, like, I know if I go get if I get a listing and I go do a few open houses, I'm going to get some buyer.
Of course.
I'm going to get $1 million to $2 million listing, so I can get $1 million to $2 million buyers, right? So anyway, but open houses I think become really important. Like if I was running a team right now, I would make every agent do an open house every week.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know if they're doing it if you don't have a platform like Sisu to know, but you have to know like that. And another thing is wherever you're spending money, it's interesting. Some teams do better on different types of leads. And I think more than anything, it's a mindset. If I were to give an agent a Zillow lead and he converted it, and then I gave him an Op City lead the next week, he probably wouldn't follow up with it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I gave it a different agent, let's call this one our female agent. If I gave her Op City and she converted it immediately, and then I gave her a Zillow lead the next week, she probably wouldn't follow up with it because in her mind, Op City's good. So my advice is it's not going to necessarily be a general thing per team or per brokerage, but find out what agents are good at, know what they're good at, and give them the leads that they produce on.
Mm-hmm.
And, you need to know your ROI. And again, this is something else you can do in Sisu, but whether you're doing it in Sisu or spreadsheets or whatever, like if you give an agent a lead, you better know how much did you spend on that lead? How much did you spend on the 30 leads you gave them? And what did they give back to you? Did you get a profit back from giving them those leads? Because if not, that agent shouldn't get those leads anymore. Give them to the agents that are converting high on those leads.
Yeah.
And so that's something as a team leader, in my opinion, you should look at that every week.
100%. And then when he comes to, interesting question that's come up to me a few times in the last couple of weeks is the difference between a team assigning leads to specific agents and just saying, okay, here's your Op City lead, here's your whatever lead that came in, and trusting that agent's going to follow up consistently and actually have a better shot at closing them over the next 6 to 9 months. Or is it make more sense to hire an ISA to actually be the nurturing agent for that and do a live handoff when they've come to the point of we're ready to do business? Any thoughts on that? I'm curious.
It's a good question. 2 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, I guess.
Yeah.
Every team in the industry was talking about ISAs. Everyone was building out an ISA team.
Yep.
And what I found is I would guess 80% of those no longer have ISA teams because the ISA team was not making money for them.
Mm-hmm.
To me, some people run great ISA teams, but to me, if it were me, my belief is your agent should follow up with them, but you need to know if your agents are following up.
Right.
So because of this whole dynamic and people getting rid of all these ISAs recently, we're actually building something right now that we call just lead analytics, which will basically we integrate with every CRM in the industry. And so basically is if you give an agent a certain type of lead, we will let you know how many times they call, text, and email that lead in the first 24, 48, 72 hours, whatever it is, whatever time frame you want to look at. But I guess my point of that is you have to put standards in place that say, look, if you're going to get these leads, this is what I expect. I expect you to call them twice, expect you to text them twice, and I expect you to email them once in the first 12 hours, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not doing that, I'm not going to give you those leads anymore. Because, I mean, the thing is, these leads are expensive. Whether you're pay-per-click, whether you're Zillow, whether you're whatever it is, there's a cost per lead, and you need to know what your cost per lead is. And why would you just throw those away on agents who aren't respectful and following up on those?
Yeah, I think that's where like a Raise Set Connect, which used to be Op City, where their algorithm is tracking that internally, and then it starts to hand the leads to the people that are actually doing exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, that's why Op City and Zillow.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's why they're getting more success on their leads.
Yeah.
Is because they hold the team leaders accountable, who then hold the agents accountable to following up on them.
Right.
So my goal is to get these team leaders, give them the ability to hold their agents accountable the exact same way, but to leads that are what they're paying for, so that they're not giving away 40% on all their business. I mean, I think it's still a good idea for, if someone wants to grow a team, Zillow and Opcity are a great way to grow a team and have a lot of leads for agents. But you want to work towards getting more and more profitable as you continue to build this team. So if you can figure out a way to get the same kind of conversion on your own leads, now you're really onto something.
Yeah, I would disagree about that. I would prefer my team leaders to develop their own leads and not be dependent on Opcity.
Yeah.
And
Totally agree.
yeah,
In my opinion, that Zillow and Opcity should be less than 25% of your business.
100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're good at it, you can develop leads for half or even, a 20th, 25% of the cost you're paying.
Well, it's not, you say if you're good at it, Jim, if you're good at what? If you're good at generating leads, well, that's only part of it. The other thing is if you're good at making your agents follow up on those leads, now you get conversion. And that's what I'm trying to solve right now.
100%. And you gotta track that conversion. I think that's really interesting as well. In my office, we've got a conversion rate. I think we got it to about 14 to 18% on average, which I think is relatively high.
Yeah.
It's your standard. But that's, it's a lot of work, as you're saying. ISA is an interesting question, and just to kind of touch back on that for a second. One thing that I've found that is that team leaders can be sometimes impatient regarding the ISA conversation, and so they expect immediate results, and they're not necessarily as patient as they want to be, especially when they're spending a lot of money on an ISA. So maybe that was a part of it, but team leaders are also smart and they pivot quickly. So got to give them all the credit in the world. So Brian, when you're looking at the future now, so you're in constant real-time contact with everyone, what do you see the next 12 months looking like for agents and team leaders and brokerage owners?
That's such a good question. I don't think anybody knows today. I've always believed that the traditional brokerage is in trouble. I've been saying this for 5 years. And what I mean by that is, if I was running a brokerage today, I would start providing leads to my agents. I would start providing coaching to my agents at a much higher level. I would start providing transaction coordination, and I would also charge my agents more.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing all those, if you're providing leads and transaction coordination, you have to charge more.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's not a profitable model. I mean, agents look at it and they say, wait a minute, because most teams charge 50%.
Right.
And if an agent says, wait a minute, 50%, well, the reality is 50%, the agent gets 50%, they put it in their pocket.
Right. Yeah.
A team owner or a broker owner takes 50% and they're paying salaries.
Right.
They're paying trainers, they're paying team leaders, they're paying sales leaders, they're paying transaction coordinators, they're paying software, they're paying all this stuff.
Yeah.
And if they're doing a good job, that's going to be less than 30%.
Yeah.
So that they're getting at least 20% in their pocket. If they're doing a great job, that's going to be 20%. They're getting 30% in their pocket.
Right.
But you coach, like, the target is let's try to get to 30% profit, but we've got to be at least 20%. If not, like, we're doing something wrong, right? So
yeah, and I believe you're exactly right. I think you gotta act as a brokerage owner today. You got to act like a team leader, and you got to basically run your office like a giant team in order to really make money. Because what team leaders have done is they've just kind of gone back and created a 1950s style brokerage.
Yeah.
And now they're back to 50-50 splits, right? Yeah. And agents are happy to pay it as long as they get leads in a system, right?
And I'm seeing it, Jim, because I would say last I looked, 38% of our customers are brokerages now. Mm-hmm. We're a platform that is built as a back office for a team or an independent brokerage. And now I'm seeing more and more brokerages come in and say, look, I need to do all these things, so I need Sisu in order to do that. But I'm seeing a lot more brokerages starting to operate that way. And my belief is all brokerages need to.
Yeah, 100%. And if they don't, I think it's very difficult to survive. Most brokerages, as you know, and just like most team leaders, are not profitable. And so they've got to pivot and they've got to change in order to become profitable. So that you do that through one of two things. You've got to be better at your recruiting and retention, but you also got to find ways to create more profit within the brokerage itself, and providing leads to your teams and your office. I mean, your agents is, I think, a key part of that component.
Yeah. And when I say run a traditional brokerage, like I'm just talking about that model of, a 90-10 split. Like,
Right.
I'm not talking about any brand names or anything else. I'm just saying, like, if you own a brokerage, I don't care what brand, you should start charging your agents 50%, at least on all the leads you're giving them. But I think
Oh,
you
for
should do
sure.
it across the board. So,
Yeah. What's interesting, I think, too, is that a lot of offices have gone the other route, like you're saying, 90-10 split or 100% plan. And, there's more power to them for those that run that operation. But the problem is there's always going to be somebody that comes in cheaper than you. So, you could be
but
chasing $1 and somebody's going to come in at 50 cents. And so, it's just a path to nowhere in my mind.
yeah, I mean, you asked me, where do I think things are going to be? I think more and more of those 90-10 brokerages are going to be out of business.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Because you got to go the other way to make it profitable. Right.
You
Yeah.
can't who wants to run a business that doesn't make money? That's exactly what they're doing. There's a lot of ego in this world. I hate to say it. I love the real estate world, but there is a lot of ego. And so much so that people are willing to give splits and have, let's say, oh, I closed $1 billion in volume and I lost money. Who wants to do that?
Right. Who
Like, not
cares?
me.
Right. Yeah. Not me either. So, Brian, you've got an incredible platform. Where can people go to learn more about you and Sisu and everything there is to know about running a successful team or brokerage?
Yeah, so I have a podcast called the Grit Podcast.
Great
You
podcast.
can get that anywhere. So it's Grit. There's a couple of grits. So Grit, the real estate mindset, growth mindset. And then the best way to learn about Sisu is sisu.co, which is sisu.co. And you can request a demo there. You can learn more about the product, and we would love to help all of you brokerages start acting like teams.
And I endorse it 100%. I'm a user, so I think it's a great platform. Brian, thank you so much. We spent a lot of time together, and you've given us a lot of great information to think about. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on the show, Jim.
Thank you.